It has been a jam-packed edition of the Sports Cubicle here on WSBC 1240 AM, WCPT 820 AM, Chicago, heartlandsignal.com, and of course on YouTube at the Sports Cubicle. And everybody was counting down the clock on Thursday, earlier on this week, as we waited to see what every team in Major League Baseball was going to do in the trade deadline, and more specifically, what the Chicago Cubs were going to do. And to break it all down is one of the best in the business. You can catch him over at Cubbies on Tap on Cubbies Crib. He is our brother, your brother. He's on Twitter at Rich_Ebs. He is Rich Eberwein. Rich, welcome back to the show, brother. How you doing?
Mike, I could be better. I'm a little disappointed by this year's trade deadline. I feel like the Cubs could have done a little bit more, but I guess we're going to see what's going to happen down the stretch here the last 2 months. But yeah, there's definitely a sense of disappointment among the fan base after what happened yesterday, or I guess lack of what happened.
Rich Eberwein joining us here on the Sports Cubicle. It's Dan Marver. I'm Mike Mercado, and you could have checked out over on the YouTube channel, the Cubbies on Tap, that you were part of a three-man crew trying to break down everything, trying to make sense, talking about Jed's extension. Marver and myself with Devin and Paul last week really broke down what we were looking forward to in the trade deadline, what we wanted to see the Cubs attack. And you can say they did attack some of the depth. They did attack some of the bullpen. But like you hear it in your voice, the way you covered it the last few days, it just seems like people were expecting more, a bigger splash. They were expecting something to really try to boost the Chicago Cubs over the next 2.5, 3 months. What do you think it was that hesitated this front office to do it? Do you think it had to do with the extension of Jed Hoyer? Do you think it had to do with the extension of some of these contracts? Why do you think they were so quiet, even though they made 4 moves? They added 4 players. What was it about this trade deadline that you thought kept them from being so apprehensive?
I think it's a combination of not willing to shell out a lot of money for Kyle Tucker's contract and not willing to trade prospects. And the reason I say that is because to acquire one of the controllable starting pitchers, you probably would have had to part with Owen Casey, who is the team's top prospect. He's a left-handed power hitting corner outfielder who, if Kyle Tucker leaves this team, will likely slide into right field, and they're hoping will become a superstar level talent. There's no telling that will happen though, because he's never made his major league debut, and they clutched him in order to cover for Kyle Tucker probably leaving this team, because they're probably not going to give him the $450 million contract that ESPN's Jeff Passan theorized he was probably going to ask for this offseason. So that's one reason, is their unwillingness to shell out big money to game-changing players like Kyle Tucker, right? And the other part is, pitching was clearly expensive at this year's trade deadline. But the simple fact is the Cubs have a deep enough farm system with enough high upside prospects to acquire a starting pitcher, even if it wasn't one of these controllable guys, and the reports are indicating that the asking price for those guys were outrageous. And if that's true, you could have at least gone out and got a rental, like a Zach Gallen is still out there who went untraded, or there was a report, not even reports, Jed Hoyer and the White Sox president of baseball operations, Chris Getz, both told the media yesterday that they had a trade in place to send Adrian Hauser to the Chicago Cubs, and it fell apart in the last half hour before the trade deadline. So you failed to meaningfully upgrade the starting rotation, and now if you make the playoffs, you're going to be completely outmatched in terms of starting pitching matchup, basically against any team you go against, not to mention the Brewers, who already have an elite starting rotation. So, it didn't, not enough was done. Not enough was done.
Hey, this is Dan here. I mean, Assad and Tyone, assuming that they're healthy, are coming back, and they're going to stick in Soroka a little bit here, obviously. But Hoyer, told it like, he was pretty straightforward. He said that it was a really tight market, He said very few rental starters, effectively no starters that had 1 year of control after this. And then of the marquee control starters, none of those guys changed hands. Obviously, we didn't acquire them, and no one else did either. The asking price we felt like was something that we couldn't do to the future. And you're right, Tucker won't be here, and Owen will be in right field next year more than likely, and that's one of the reasons they couldn't part with him. And in terms of Hauser, it would have been nice to get him. It was funny. I was at the 4-hour rain delay on Wednesday where Hauser was supposed to start, and he did not, of course. And he ended up in Tampa. So it was quite obvious that they were trying to save him to send him somewhere. But the thing is that if everybody's healthy, coming back from the injured list, they have a surplus of starters, actually 6 or 7. So, I mean, obviously you're going to be counting on Ray to continue to be okay as well as Horton and maybe even Brown, but you won't need him if Taillon is back to his usual self, as well as maybe Assad.
Yeah, I think in a playoff series, right? You're starting Shota Imanaga and Matthew Boyd, assuming Matthew Boyd stays healthy, because he hasn't pitched more than 100 innings in the last 6 years, so there's burnout concerns there. Cade Horton has never pitched as many innings as he has this year. Jameson Taillon, I'm not comfortable with him starting the third game of a playoff series. It would be much more ideal if he's starting the fourth game, right? So and Javier Assad is coming off an injury and hasn't pitched in over, I don't know, 7 months, 8 months. So you could have done more to bolster your chances this year. And I understand not wanting to give up the farm in order to compete over the next few years, but still, it feels like it's a wasted opportunity for this season when you have Kyle Tucker on the roster, when you have your offense humming at the point where they're a top 5 offense for the first 2/3 of the season. That doesn't happen too often. You never know what's going to happen year over year. The Cubs could regress. PCA could not play at an MVP caliber level next year. Kyle Tucker could be off the roster. Michael Busch could regress. These seasons like the Cubs are having in 2025 don't come around too often. And I feel like that the bolstering the starting rotation would have just increased your chances and given you a better opportunity to compete and make a deep playoff run this year while your team is good.
So let's take into account that we know Craig Counsell, his specialty is how he sets up the rotation, how he deploys the bullpen, especially in playoff pushes and in the playoffs themselves. So I guess my question is, do you think this Cubs rotation and bullpen as it is now constructed after the trade deadline, where do they rank? Are they on the top third of the National League? Are they in the bottom third of the playoff teams? Are they exactly where they belong? A few games behind Milwaukee, who has been on this crazy streak this entire season. Now that we're at the other side of July, where do you think this rotation, the strength of what has always made Craig Counsell a great manager, now where do you think the Cubs rank amongst playoff teams with those two artilleries?
I mean, in terms of the starting rotation, you're probably near the bottom of the playoff teams. Take any team. You're going against the Phillies, you got to face Zach Wheeler, Christopher Sanchez, and probably Jesus Luzardo or Aaron Nola if he's healthy. You're outgunned there. If you're facing the Brewers, you got to face, Jacob Mizorowski, Brandon Woodruff, and Freddie Peralta. Kind of outgunned on that front too. It's not great, but the other thing is I don't hate the moves that the Cubs did make. Is the messed up part about this, right? Like they went into this deadline with a lot of boxes checked, right? They could have used an upgrade on the bench, and they got that with Willie Castro, like a super utility guy who can play virtually every position, and he crushes left-handed pitching. That was a good get, a need that you needed to fill, and you needed help in the bullpen too. You went out and got 3 guys, and I view Mike Soroka as a bullpen guy because if you look at his numbers, they fall off a cliff after the 5th inning. So he doesn't go deep into ball games. When he does, he gets shelled. So that is like a good multi-inning reliever to replace Chris Flexen, who you just DFA'd. But to Marver's point, Javier Assad is coming back to fill that role, and Taillon is coming back too, so Colin Ray could slip into that role too. So you kind of already had that. And then, you did upgrade you're left-handed too with Rogers, and you got Kittredge. Those are good bullpen additions. Those are reinforcements that the Cubs needed, and now Ryan Presley, we don't have to watch him give up a billion walks and hits all the time. The bullpen arguably got better, right? And that was already a strength of the team, though. The big check box simply just didn't get checked off, and that was adding a starting pitcher.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You have to keep in mind too that there may never be a fourth starter needed, because the way it stands now, they'll be playing a best of 3 series. I mean, it's kind of crazy. Yeah. It's kind of crazy if you look at it. Milwaukee has 64 wins. The Dodgers have 63, as do the Cubs. And the Mets have 62, 61 for Philadelphia, and 60 for San Diego. And those are your playoff teams. And then there's a drop off. I mean, right now the Cubs would have to drop 7 games to fall behind, to be out of the playoffs. So they're still in pretty good shape in that regard. And you forgot the big guy in the Milwaukee roster is Quintana. He's actually 7-4. So he's another one that you have to watch for. But they'd never been able to hit Peralta, and they finally did. So miracles do occur. But in terms of what's going to happen going forward, they obviously were unable to get a frontline pitcher, but they may be able to get by. I mean, after all, if they're on their game, Imanaga is pretty solid, and he had his issues against the Sox, but overall he's done pretty well. So, I mean, he's going to obviously be key to the future of this pennant race if he can be consistent. So I would look forward to that. And obviously, they have like all these pitchers now. And Boyd's been remarkable. He's 11-4. So I mean, and an all-star. So those two guys, can really they keep it up. That would be very helpful for the future of the playoff race. To have the top 2 guys be losing streak stoppers.
Yeah. Well, I think the other part about this that sort of rubbed me the wrong way is so in the off season, the Cubs they jettisoned Cody Bellinger. They sent him to the Yankees in a straight salary dump move, and it was a salary dump because they never reinvested that money, right? They weren't in on a quality starting pitcher last off season, right? They didn't go after a Max Fried or a Corbin Burns, and then we were told, well, there's going to be payroll flexibility for midseason additions at the trade deadline. And then they were unwilling to move prospect capital to get a frontline starting pitcher as well. So I just don't understand where the quality starting pitching help is going to come from this year, because it's not, you're relying on guys like Imanaga and Boyd to continue pitching the way they are, but they need help, right? And there's no telling if Cade Horton can even make it to October the way, he has been injured over his career, right? And Tyone, if he comes back, and what if he continues to get shelled and give up home runs? There's too many concerns for me in the current rotation that to not part with some prospects to bolster what you have.
He's on Twitter at Rich_Ebbs. You could catch him on Cubbies on Tap at Cubbies Crib. That's Cubs on Tap and Cubbies Crib. And of course at heartlandsignal.com. He's one of the best in the business. Before we let you go, brother, it's officially official. Maybe in 2027, we might be watching baseball, and Hector might be an all-star game at Wrigley Field if all this goes on. What are your thoughts when the commissioner, Rob Manfred, has finally made it official, the worst kept secret in baseball, that the all-star game will be heading to the north side of Chicago?
Well, I think it's about time. It's been too long since there's been an all-star game at Wrigley Field, and I think the fans deserve it. But the other, we don't know if there's going to be baseball that year because of the contract negotiation. So we'll see what happens. But it is kind of poetic that this news is coming right around when Ryan Sandberg unfortunately passed away, because the last time there was a all-star game at Wrigley Field, Ryan Sandberg won the home run derby at Wrigley Field, which is pretty cool. So, hopefully there is an all-star game, and I hope that the CBA negotiations don't get in the way, because I think it'll be a really cool thing for the city and for Wrigleyville and for Cubs fans.
Right, even if they don't have the game in 27, maybe they'd get it in 28 then if it's postponed, kind of like what happened with Atlanta.
Good point.
Yeah, I think it's just going to be interesting as we look back through the rest of the season. heading into next season. Hopefully it's a very successful rest of 2025 and postseason. But we'll look back at this offseason at how Jed and Carter handled this, how we're going to compare it to how Theo handled it. We've brought up the name Quintana. I think I even heard you guys talking about it on Cubs on Tap, where they were willing to give up the top hitting prospect and the top pitching prospect to try to get a pitcher to try to win now, and it didn't. It blew up in their face. And this is a team that refuses to try. I hate saying make the same mistake twice because nobody wants to do that, but they're afraid to take the risk again since Jason Hayward and since that Quintana trade. So I think kind of leaving it on that, I know that was the point you guys made it up, that you guys brought up, and the extension itself, any thoughts on it, the way they handled it, kind of the final thesis on the 2025 trade deadline for the Chicago Cubs?
It's a good point you brought up about the Quintana trade. So it didn't work out for the Cubs at the time, but you respect the move, right? Like they needed a quality starting pitcher at the time. And at the time, Quintana was a controllable, good starting pitcher. And you made the big swing to make it happen. I'm concerned that once Theo Epstein left this team, that they no longer have the wherewithal to make that kind of move. And, we haven't seen Jed Hoyer do that. I guess the Kyle Tucker move counts, but this would have been a different animal to go get a controllable starting pitcher for the front line. And they just didn't have the guts to do it.
You can find him on Twitter at Rich_Ebs. He's on Cubs on Tap at Cubbies Crib. Check out all the amazing work he is doing there, covering this team like a blanket. He is Rich Eberwein. He is our brother. He is your brother. And he's one of the best in the business, covering the north side of Chicago. Rich, we will talk to you soon as we get ready for a month of August where the Cubs can really make some room, try to get back into first place, and at the very least bury some of these wildcard teams and make it a less stressful September. Any last thoughts, buddy? Are you working on anything you want to plug before we head on out?
Just keep an eye out on Cubbies Crib. I'm working on a story on one trade from this deadline that Cubs fans will not like come October. So keep an eye out for that. And thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. Appreciate you letting me vent all my frustrations and improve my mental health.
You make us, you're talking us off the ledge many different times, my friend. He's one of the best in the business. He is Rich Eberwein here on the Sports Cubicle and Sports from the Couch. He's the marvelous one, Dan Marver. I'm Mike Mercado. We keep things tuned into WCPT 820 AM, heartlandsignal.com, WSBC 1240 AM, Chicago, heartlandsignal.com, and on YouTube at the Sports Cubicle.